It's owl.
That is the joy of finding an animal lost to science for more than 100 years. Welcome to Rewild's search for lost species, which scours the planet for animals, plants, and fungi that scientists feared lost for at least a decade. The search for lost species has found more than a dozen of our most wanted and documented many rare ones along the way, like the Volkscow's chameleon, Fagild's trapdoor spider.
It's more important than holding a treasure. For me, it was more valuable to hold that spider than any other object that I ever held in my life.
Attenborough's long-beaked echidna, the Somali sengi, the big puma fungus.
Fue una alegría inmensa de compartir esta alegría con las personas de la comunidad.
And this little nugget. It's the world's most crucial game of lost and found, given that an estimated 1 million species are at risk of extinction by 2050. Our goal is to reverse that. Finding a species is just the beginning. Each rediscovery leads to media coverage reaching billions, capturing our imaginations, raising awareness,
Get it, duck. Can't we just save them for fashion?
contributing crucial knowledge, leading to real, tangible conservation on the ground.
Finding the species opens doors for us to pursue habitat protection as well as conservation projects for other species that are also in the same ecosystem.
As our quest continues, you can support us as we search for lost sharks, lost fishes, lost birds, lost amphibians, and more. Because what these rediscoveries teach us is, all is not lost. What is lost can be found. We can protect and restore our planet. Together, let's find something wild for all wild kind.
Man. Shit, my legs are shivering. I can't believe it. God.
Right. Good morning or afternoon or evening, everyone, depending on where you are. I'm Robin Moore, Vice President of Communications and Marketing at Rewild, and today I have the pleasure of talking about storytelling. And I'm going to start sharing my screen so that I can walk you through. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Feel free to ping any questions as I go through in the chat. I will try to check them and answer them as I go. But yeah, I'm really gonna talk about lost species and how we tell the story of lost species, and really giving the context, I think, telling the story of lost species. And it really, the inception of the initiative really is thanks to this. This is a variable harlequin toad in Costa Rica. And this toad was decimated in the early 90s by a deadly fungus that swept through Costa Rica and was thought to have been driven to extinction pretty quickly. In 2008, it was rediscovered. It was found after almost a couple of decades without trace. This was against the backdrop of some pretty bleak news. So at the time, or around this time, 2005, I joined Conservation International, where I was heading up the amphibian program. And it was right on the heels of the Global Amphibian Assessment coming out, which showed that a third of amphibians were threatened with extinction. And the harlequin toads were particularly hard hit. So, our job was really trying to communicate this to get people to care and to do something about it. And what was really challenging was getting people to care. I spent years trying to figure out how to communicate this in a way that would sort of resonate. And I think the challenge is with statistics, it doesn't matter if it's 2 or 200 or 2,000, it kind of has the same emotional resonance in people. We sort of become immune beyond one. We relate one-on-one. Beyond that, we kind of, we basically have the same emotional response. So it becomes very hard to convey these figures in a way that evokes anything in people. So when this harlequin toad was rediscovered in 2008, it gave myself and some of my colleagues sort of this hope. I mean, that perhaps some of the others that were out, we thought had been wiped out, were actually hanging on. So we decided, what if we could sort of turn the narrative on its head, or use a sort of Trojan horse approach to storytelling, where we're, rather than just hammering people over the head with these really dire apocalyptic scenarios and statistics and projections about amphibians, what if we actually focused in on those that were giving us reason for hope? And these Lazarus species could hold clues as to what was causing others to go extinct, and what was setting apart the ones that were surviving. So it was also an important endeavor from a scientific perspective to understand why were some individuals, populations surviving where others had gone, and could they be the key to bringing them back? So I felt really energized and inspired, after we sort of huddled and earnestly pulled together this sort of this poster. This is based off of reaching out to a number of experts across the world. We're part of the amphibian specialist group, the IUCN SSC amphibian specialist group at the time. So we had access to a network of scientists. So we essentially reached out and said, what species are lost? What species have not been seen in at least 10 years and feared extinct, but there is a hope they could be still out there. And we compiled a list at that time of about 100. This was 2008, 2009. And from that, we pulled together this list of the top 10. Essentially, the idea was to make this a communications campaign. So having these poster species was really important to be able to tell the stories and allow people to visualize it. And obviously you have some iconic ones like the golden toad, which is listed as extinct, the gastric breeding frog, and then more obscure ones. And we tried to sort of have a mix of some of the iconic ones with ones that people may not have heard of, try to get taxonomic breadth. We had salamanders, a couple of salamanders in there. On the broader list, we had Sicilians. We had expeditions looking for Sicilians. And we also tried to get that good sort of geographic spread with our top 10. And then in 2010, August 2010, we launched the search. And it was kind of crazy. It got a lot of pickup off the bat. I think it generated about over 600 news articles over the course of the following months. So we launched it. We were able to support 33 teams. We partnered with Global Wildlife Conservation, which was Rewild. What Rewild became Rewild because we wanted to get funds out quickly to groups on the ground, and Rewild was really well set up, positioned to do that. So it was a great partnership around this concept, and we were able to support over 6 months 33 teams scouring, I think, around 20 countries for the lost amphibians. And I remember when it launched just feeling really nervous because the media attention, they all wanted to know what was going to happen. And I think they thought we'd sort of pre-cooked it, like we had some in the bag. And I honestly had no idea if any would be found. So it was really kind of nerve-wracking to see what would happen. And then rediscoveries started coming in, and it really, it showed sort of the power of this concept as a vehicle for storytelling. Each rediscovery got attention. There were some, I mean, when it comes to the storytelling elements, I think the obvious thing is to announce every rediscovery when it happens. But I'll talk a little later about this, but there's a lot of thought that goes into any announcement and strategy behind it to ensure that it's not going to do more harm than good. We obviously don't want to alert people to where these rare species are. So we're all obviously cryptic about exact locations. And we had an interesting situation where we actually rediscovered 6 species in Haiti in the last remaining tract of forest in the southwest of Haiti. I got to go on this expedition with Blair Hedges, incredible amphibian biologist, and team. And we debated a long time whether to actually announce this, because it was hot on the heels of the earthquake in Haiti, which was obviously devastating. And the last thing we want to do is to come across as tone deaf when people are obviously going through tragedy. The last thing that they are thinking about is frogs. But we always sort of lean on our local partners to advise. And our partners in Haiti were really keen to do this story because I think a lot of the news that comes out of Haiti is pretty one-dimensional. It's about tragedy, it's about suffering, it's about being victims. And they really like the idea of a positive story, empowering story coming out of Haiti about hope for Haiti's environment. So we went out with this story and it got a lot of coverage. And I personally ended up going back about 12 times to Haiti. I think it was identified by the Alliance for Zero Extinction, this mountain, as the most important site for amphibians in the world. It had the highest number of amphibians found nowhere else in the world in this location. So really shining the spotlight on it would help sort of leverage its profile, give it visibility. We created a calendar with partners again that we distributed through Haiti, just to try to build that sort of pride and again showcase what you don't often hear about in Haiti, which is the natural beauty. And although there's less than 1% of original forest cover standing, that forest is absolutely incredible, beautiful. I mean, when I went into this cloud forest with these tree ferns, it was magical, and it's alive with the sound of frogs. So we also wanted to celebrate that. And then in 2019, we were, with partners, able to announce the first ever private nature reserve in Grand Bois in the Massif de la Haute mountain range, which is that AZE site for amphibians, to protect some of these species, including a rediscovered species. So this is one example of sort of how that story, it's not always just what happens in the moment, but it can be a long-term kind of narrative that can help provide a tailwind for conservation efforts when we shine the spotlight, build pride in these areas. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the context of lost species. Another of the top 10 that I got to go and see myself was a Sambas stream toad, and when it was rediscovered, they realized how beautiful it was, these reds and greens and yellows. So it was renamed the Bornean rainbow toad. And again, this rediscovery, it generated funds for research on it. It generated pride, in this toad in the area, and it also, got the story into outlets that we wouldn't normally get our stories into, with headlines that you wouldn't normally expect from scientists, and it just to show sort of the breadth and scope of the kind of attention this got. It really was an incredible vehicle for, again, that Trojan horse approach to getting outlets that would never normally cover the amphibian extinction crisis, but with these stories. And within the stories, obviously we're able to talk about the broader narrative, the broader picture. And then I think in 2013, 2014, I was approached with the idea of writing a book about lost frogs, and felt it was a good opportunity just to capture, what happened, what we learned. So yeah, I spent a year writing 70,000 words on it, which was a lot harder than I expected. And then it came out 2014, the book in the UK by Bloomsbury, and then it was also published in the US, called In Search of Lost Frogs. And that, again, was an opportunity to talk about not just about the rediscoveries, but about all the people behind them and about the search efforts that were not successful. Because, I think when we just announce rediscoveries, people can start to think it's easy, but really there's a lot of grueling time, effort, searches that are, I've been there, and when you come away empty-handed, it can feel extremely deflating. You pour a lot into these searches. So it was an opportunity to sort of also reveal that side of it. And so that was sort of the context really for the launch of the Search for Lost Species. We'd always sort of, at this time I was with Global Wildlife Conservation, Rewild's former incantation, and we toyed with the idea. We sort of partnered on the Search for Lost Frogs. We'd been able to support a lot of expeditions, and we toyed with the idea of what if we just broadened it to more taxa. And then at the time, we were a very small organization. I mean, I think if we were 10, that was stretching it. And communications team was essentially me and Lindsay Rennick-Meyer, who is incredible and really sort of shared the passion for this idea. So together, Lindsay and I decided that we would basically compile a list. We would reach out to all of the IUCN species specialist groups, tap, an enormous network of experts and expertise, and just gauge whether if there was appetite for this, and then start also to gauge what our criteria for lost species and whether this was appropriate. Obviously, since then, there's been publication that really does articulate what is lost species, that sort of 10-year benchmark still holds. And we felt back then that was sort of appropriate across the range of taxonomic groups as a minimum threshold. And then when we got overwhelming response from people, it was really incredible. We decided to compile a list. So the list at the time was way smaller than it is now, but I think our first list was 1,200. We got 1,200 nominations for lost species. It's now over 4,300. And again, that's built in collaboration with a network of more than 10,000 experts. The IUCN volunteer network is enormous. So we were really tapping an incredible network. And all of this work has been possible because of partnerships and teamwork. So I'm not going to have the chance to acknowledge all the partners, but yeah, it would not be possible without an incredible, extraordinary team effort of inordinate number of partners. So with this list, we sort of had the makings of a campaign. Essentially, at the time, it was a campaign because we didn't have a program. We didn't have a lost species program. But Lindsay and I were really excited as a vehicle again for telling stories about species and about biodiversity in a way that was much more tangible and exciting for our audiences. Top 10 would have been too limiting for the breadth of the species that we had in our list, so we decided to do a top 25. We now refer to this as the most wanted because as species have been rediscovered, we've kind of rotated ones on and off. So it's an ongoing sort of list of the most wanted that we maintain. And again, we reached out. When we reached out, we sort of asked for nominations for what would qualify for this list. Again, it's a little bit subjective. We wanted species on here that we could tell a good story about and get people excited about the prospect of rediscovering them, so that if we did, it would give us that leverage. Again, we try to really get a range of taxonomic groups. We had a pitcher plant. We had insects, we had corals, we had, we try to capture every taxonomic group. We later added fungi. Again, wanted to make sure we represented the three kingdoms of macroscopic life. And we got the sort of Daniel Craig to help launch it. We made a video at the time of him narrating, just to give it that sort of boost. And yeah, in April 2017, we launched the search. Again, not really knowing what was going to happen. And when we launched it, one of the challenges with storytelling around lost species is there's often a lack of visual assets, photos or video of the species that we are talking about. So we had to lean in a lot to art. And actually, we sort of used this as a tool when we launched. We got the artist Alexis Rockman, who was famous for doing this kind of dystopian artwork about futures and these sort of projecting the environmental apocalypse. So he was excited to partake, and we made a video about his process of making the art as one sort of lens through which to tell the story of lost species. So I'm going to play that quickly now, just so you can.
Hi, I'm artist Alexis Rockman. This is my rescue dog, Padme. We're going to go to my studio today and work on the Lost Species campaign. Why don't you join me? Come on.
On a certain level, the reason I make my work is that if I'm in the city, I long for those places. And I long to be more connected to my, you want to call it evolutionary history or spiritualism or whatever, it's all the sentiment. The way these drawings are made, they're really not about control. They're about a sort of a sensibility of optimism that it's going to work out, but they're so completely out of control that you just don't know what's going to happen. And there's something that I think is appropriate for the Lost Species project, because lost species, you have to go in, you have to be incredibly hopeful to just even bother to do it. Being an artist and looking for lost species, they're kind of improbable that it's going to work out either way. There's also a sense of with time travel, if you're doing something that's extinct, how much you're trying to give yourself a continuity and not being displaced by your own cultural endeavors. I think that's very moving. So the lost species, I think, is an admirable thing. I hope something comes of it in terms of its ability to generate results, so to speak. It's the idea, I mean, so many things are going extinct. It's the structure of hope, right? Does a pink-headed duck have pink feet? It's not a trick question.
Hi, I'm
Sorry, I need to get out of this. Okay. You will still see my full screen. Hopefully. So yeah, as well as Alexis Rockman, we worked with other artists. James Prosek painted the pink-headed duck. Cindy Lane by the bullneck seahorse. Cindy is an Australian artist, so she connected with bullneck seahorse. And then Lorraine Lutz, who paints these incredible tiny paintings, the Sinu parakeet from Colombia. And then later on, when we did our lost legends, and these are species that are listed as extinct, but are kind of iconic in being lost, such as the Tasmanian tiger and the golden toad. And we worked with artist Tyler Thrasher to bring these to life in creative ways. But really at the heart of I think the campaign is the expeditions that go in search of these lost species. So I just want to give a sense of sort of our process for telling the stories around expeditions. So there's a lot of work that goes in pre-expedition. We coordinate with search teams, with partners to align on the strategy. We have to make really sure that we're aligned because, obviously if anything is posted to social ahead of a press release or ahead of an official announcement, the cat is out the bag, so to speak. So we have to be really aligned and clear on what we are going to communicate and what we are not going to communicate until we're all absolutely ready. And I'll talk a little bit about why this is really vital. And then also we always try to identify the needs and opportunities for gathering assets, whether expedition team members are able to gather assets, whether we need to try to get somebody with them, whether there's budget, et cetera, et cetera. So trying to ensure that when we do come to make any announcements that we have the assets. Again, most of the media that we're using to talk about lost species are very visual media. So having those visual assets is really key. And the artwork is great, but once we rediscover something, people want to see that. Post-expedition, just gathering as much information. Again, Lindsay and Devon on our comms team have been incredible at sort of really gathering as much information as possible about the searches, what was found, but also the sort of accompanying information about the local communities, the conditions, and then also gathering assets, photo, video assets, and then confirming any findings. And this can take a while, before we announce lost species, we want to be sure that they are actually rediscoveries. So often we have to do a lot of diligence, get confirmation, and then, whether that's using DNA, whether it's getting other experts to verify, whatever form that takes. And then I think agreeing on an embargo is really important, again, just so that all partners are aligned on when this news will go out. And also a risk assessment. Again, with every announcement, we assess whether there's any risk associated with it. We sort of look at how to mitigate that. And I'll talk about one sort of cautionary tale that loomed large as we launched the search for lost species. And then once all partners are aligned, we develop a strategy for announcing the findings via a joint press release and across platforms. So Rewild typically develops toolkits for partners with the handles, messages, and suggested social copy so that when we go out, we're all pretty consistent in how we're talking about this, that we're all on the same page about which partners, especially which local partners, which have to be sort of included, acknowledged, mentioned, because these are all fully collaborative expeditions, and often relying on that local knowledge, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. So this is one cautionary tale. I mean, this happened a couple of years before we launched the search for lost species, and this was ornithologist Chris Velarde, who I've spent time with in Solomon Islands, and he rediscovered a mustached kingfisher in the Solomon Islands that had been lost for decades. Got this beautiful photo, put out the news, and then the narrative took a quick turn because it turned out they'd collected this individual. And I think that's the power of story, is that people connect very emotionally with individuals. So when you have a photo of an individual, people get invested in the story of that individual. And when they find out that individual was collected, and there's a quote in this article that says, of course, collect means killed, a lame attempt to sanitize a totally unnecessary killing of this remarkable sentient being. And I think this also makes the point clear. It doesn't matter what you say, it's what people hear. And perceptions are everything. And there was a real attempt to try to shift the narrative to talk about the nuance of why the collection was important. But, you know, the internet lynch mob is unforgiving and not really there for nuanced debate. It's once you know that narrative is sort of the one, and there was a New York Times article came out about it. You know, the ornithologist the internet called a murder. I mean, it was a real sort of, I think, a lesson in how people will receive these stories. And when we start support expeditions going in search of lost species, we do not support the collection of individuals because, you know, we just don't want to enter into that debate. It doesn't typically go well when you're putting things out to the forum of public opinion. So we stay on the side of the line where we can say, you know, these individuals that you're seeing were released into the wild. Or were, you know, if they were taken into assurance colonies, just so we can be transparent about that. And then when it comes to how we talk about, where we talk about this, we use a number of platforms. We have media relations, obviously. I mentioned Lindsay and Devon, and they're really our earned media gurus, and we'll work to craft those press releases, make very individualized pitches, hundreds of individualized pitches. Then thought leadership blog. So we use the blog as to go sort of more in depth in certain areas and to convey different perspectives, or behind the scenes, or. And then obviously we have our website. We have an email newsletter. We have a weekly wild where we'll, you know, get this out to our subscribers. We will occasionally have email campaigns. I'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, social media is huge. It's where most people are spending a lot of their time. And then events, and then through influencers as well, just leveraging the platforms of others who have those audiences built in. I mean, this is just a tiny snapshot. I think I pulled together a list of about 18 rediscoveries actually since we launched. But this is just gives a sort of snapshot of the trajectory of some of them. So the first months after we launched the search, or later that year, in 2017, our first rediscovery happened to be one of the previous top 10 lost amphibians, actually, Jackson's climbing salamander, that I had been looking for in Guatemala with Carlos Vasquez, who'd been on, I would say, 36 expeditions to this area. And it was on the back of this salamander that an other rediscovered species, that a new protected area was created in Guatemala, in the Cuchimatanes Mountains. And when this was rediscovered, it got a modest sort of coverage. It got 17 media hits, over 1 million in reach, and over 1 million in ad value. So we're able to tell sort of what the ad value of this reach is if you were to pay to sort of promote this. But really, I think we were all completely blown away in 2019 when Wallace's giant bee was rediscovered. This was the world's largest bee, and this just went ballistic. It got over 1,500 hits, 1.8 billion in reach, and 16.9 million in ad value. And I think there was, you know, several elements of it that just I'll talk to later that sort of made it get that kind of reach. Part of it just people, you know, like hyperboles, so it's the largest bee, and just some of the visuals were incredible. Also in 2019, Silverback chevrotain, 1,750 hits, 3.6 billion in reach, and 22.6 million in ad value. So just incredible, incredible sort of growth in terms of the number of media hits. And then the Somali Sengi, again in the following year, 579 hits, 3.1 billion reach, and 29 million ad value. So just incredible. You know, we see sort of the building and interest and attention around the rediscoveries. Yeah, the Wallace's Giant Bee, I think one of the reasons that it really took off was just the visuals. And I think this composite image showing it next to honeybee just sort of, you know, it's very striking. You can see that size. And yeah, this just got incredible amount of coverage. And then, you know, what our strategy is always how do we sort of tell this story in different ways. So this is just a sort of I found this board that we're sort of playing with to map out how we would sort of show this across social. I think this back in the day when Facebook was somewhere we would, you know, lean into. Now it's way more Instagram, but you know, this, yeah, it just shows you the different format. And we were leaning into stories as well to tell these stories. So this, we mapped out this as sort of the Instagram stories to announce the rediscovery. Again, sort of partnering with other creatives. So this group called Under the Skin reached out when we announced the silverback chevrotain, or they knew that the silverback chevrotain rediscovery announcement was coming. And we worked together to, they would produce some beautiful visual assets that they put out on social around the rediscovery. Again, called Under the Skin. So they're known for these kind of, yeah, the skeletal graphics. Apologies, getting over a very bad cough, so apologize for the croaky voice too. Yeah, so this is just an example of how we would sort of make that information about these species interesting and visual. Peppermint Narwhal, always loved the stuff they put out. So again, just having them lean in and collaborate on announcing Lost Species Month, you know, is incredible. And then I think, you know, ultimately what we want the Lost Species to do is galvanize interest, but also catalyze conservation. So I'm going to give a few examples of how rediscovery has helped. So these aren't all species that are necessarily part of the search for lost species, but these are rediscovered species that have become flagships for conservation. Obviously, the Jackson's climbing salamander was our first most wanted rediscovery. And this was despite multiple expeditions, this was actually rediscovered by a ranger who was guarding the private reserve that our partners had created. And he was sitting down to lunch one day and he saw this incredible salamander called the Golden Wonder. And we were able to leverage this rediscovery to do a fundraiser around Giving Tuesday to raise support to help solidify protection of this area, to fund the local partners. So we set a $5,000 target. We raised $44,000, so 889%, sorry, of our target. Another rediscovered species that was lost for about 40 years and discovered in the 1990s was the Jamaican iguana. When the Jamaican iguana's home was under threat, we partnered again with local partners to amplify a campaign. And we were able to really leverage the power again of visual storytelling. And 2.5 years of campaigning, able to help get this area protected. And the Goat Islands, where we want to return the iguanas, was sort of declared a wildlife sanctuary as well. So again, I think it just shows the power of these flagship species in helping get people to rally behind these conservation actions. In Intag Valley in Ecuador, the long-nosed harlequin frog, which was again lost in the 80s, found again in 2016. It became a symbol of defiance against mining plans in Intag Valley. And it was called locally the Leonardo DiCaprio's frog because Leonardo DiCaprio was posting about this and shining the spotlight on this case. And again, we worked with local partners. It was a rights of nature case where the communities were trying to speak up for the rights of nature to protect their home. And again, it's successful. Again, just for international attention, it always helps to have that kind of flagship species that people can point to. Again, in Haiti, in 2022, a rediscovered magnolia species that was lost for 97 years, again, was another different hopeful story out of Haiti. And really tapped into or connected well with the restoration project that our partners, the Haiti National Trust, have been leading for a magnolia species that they're bringing back from the brink. So, you know, again, just building these positive, hopeful narratives. A couple of questions coming in that I will answer now. So people from the Global South wanting to know how to apply and generally about funding. So Christina Briggs, who's our lost species lead, is going to put her email in at the end of the chat, and she'll be able to answer questions about our strategy behind supporting expeditions. So look out for that. Also wanting to know about putting out sensitive location information. Yeah, generally our strategy is not to put out sensitive location information. We're typically cryptic, and again, that goes into our sort of risk assessment when we're deciding how and even whether to put out news of rediscoveries. You know, Wallace's giant bee was a big sort of focus of discussion because a bee sold on eBay a couple of years earlier. So, you know, it was in demand by collectors. But what we did recognize in that instance was that collectors actually knew it was there. And we wanted to shine a spotlight on to bring awareness that it's there and needs protection because it is under threat. So it's always sort of factored in how we reveal this information. We never get too specific about it. We never provide the exact location. And we're always very cautious to ensure that we're not going to be putting these, if we are making this announcement, that, you know, those protections are in place where we can try to mitigate any risk that we foresee. And then, you know, I think also it's important to broaden the narrative. You know, I think we lean on science to guide our efforts, but the reality is that local communities often know more about these species than anybody and are often aware that they exist. So when we say lost, it's often lost to science, but it may not be lost to the people who are there. And this is one of my favorite stories, this star-and-eye harlequin toad in Colombia. The Kogi indigenous people knew the frog, and it was sort of an indicator of, you know, when the rains were coming, and they have a sort of a woven history with this species. So it was a beautiful way to tell a story through that lens of some of these species that we call rediscovered have been known all along. And we're really bringing them to light for the, you know, the broader world. But I think it's really important to recognize that the sort of the knowledge that is there and that helps guide many of these searches, and that intimate relationship that often people in these areas have with this species, even if science has not recorded them for over 10 years. And then if you watch the video at the beginning, the launch video, you'll see that we also expanded it to come up with these with partners, to come up with different lists, to really, use it as a vehicle to launch taxon specific searches, search for lost amphibians, lost birds, lost sharks, lost small mammals. So with Shoal, we launched the search for lost fishes, and the rediscovery of the leopard barbel in Turkey was a great story to come out of that. With the American Bird Conservancy and BirdLife International, launched the search for lost birds, which led to one of the biggest stories to come out. The rediscovery of the black-naped pheasant pigeon in Papua New Guinea was, just went really viral. And I think also highlights one of the key ingredients to talking about this, and that is the emotion of rediscovery. And I think the video that was captured the moment that the researchers recognized what they had on their camera trap is really gold in terms of that. And I'm going to show that short clip just to show that we sort of isolated this and just reshared just this clip, because I think people want that sort of genuine, authentic, sort of emotionally driven insight on what it is like to really to rediscover a lost species, because it's hard to convey.
Maybe just hit the side arrow. Doka. It's it's owl. Isn't it owl? We can't tell them. We have to have them look through the photos too. We say nothing. Holy shit, man. Oh, man, this is the what the fuck? Ever. Oh man, can you display it back? Huh? Man,
Shit, my legs are shivering. I can't believe it.
God. Jordan, that's an owl.
So really, incredible moment, and incredible to have that captured on camera, because it's often hard in the heat of the moment to capture those kind of moments. So I'm just gonna wrap up with, why tell stories of lost species? I remember when I launched the search for lost frogs, a lot of people sort of asked if I wasn't worried about giving people kind of false hope when the reality is pretty bleak. And I'm going to provide a little context of why I think it is important to tell these kind of stories, and why this is a powerful vehicle. Because the media does tend to lean into the negative. 98% of environmental stories are told with a negative frame. And that makes sense, when you're trying to avoid being killed by a buffalo, or you're trying to, but in this oversaturated information age, most of that isn't guiding our sort of risk avoidance. So it's just this bombardment. We're just tuned to respond to threat, to risk. So most of the stories that we click on are negative. But the result of that is that we have this perception that we're doomed. 5% of youth in a recent survey said that humanity is doomed. And really that kind of despair is not a motivating force. So we have to think, if we want people to engage and to get involved, that we need to have a more empowering emotions that we're trying to evoke. And experiencing everyday wonder can help us see that we're part of something bigger. awe, prompts people to explore, engage with the world. It heightens our sense of connection. And I think often we are missing that sense of awe and wonder when we communicate about the problems and the challenges. And we forget to sort of evoke that sense of connection. And hope is, I prefer hope than optimism, to be honest, because I think hope is more informed, it's more targeted. Optimism can feel a little passive, whereas hope really is more than a feel-good emotion. It's a dynamic cognitive emotional system. And I think when we evoke hope, it can inspire us to care and to engage. And again, some of the best stories of the searches for lost species are those that have not yet been found. Richard Thorns has been spent 5 decades looking for the pink-headed duck and has not given up. And I think there's something really incredible to be learned from that tenacity and persistence. And if that ever does pay off, you know, I think it just makes it an incredible, incredible story. So with that, I will thank everybody for their time. And again, I think Christina shared her email in the chat. So if you have any follow-up questions, want to get in touch about the lost species, learn more, please bombard Christina's inbox. And with that, I will open it up for, are there any other questions? I probably missed half of them. But yeah, if there's any more, let me know. Good to see someone else in Portugal, where I am speaking from. Again, any questions relating to funding or the programmatic side of things, please email Christina, and she can, yeah, talk through our strategy. But if anyone's got any questions about the communications or anything I've talked about, let me know. Otherwise, thank you all for your time, and I will sign out. Thank you.